How's it going, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the next episode of my new podcast series called Preparing for the Future. Now, we've had a lot of great episodes so far. A lot of episodes I've been really happy to talk about, bring up a lot of important information. And today we're going to be talking about another big episode, and that is talking with your superiors, or in other words, your boss. Because as you're going to kind of realize whenever you get in whatever job you have, you're going to have, your regular coworkers, but you're also going to have your boss. And there's a particular way that you need to talk with the boss, how you need to act around the boss, and I'm going to kind of share how all that works. And then kind of going into the examples that I have during my time, during my work life. So let's get started. Now, if you get a job anywhere, you're going to have your standard coworkers, people that, you can kind of talk to on a daily basis, kind of chat with, and, I wouldn't necessarily say relieve some stress, but, you have someone in common to talk to, where if you're on the job, you're doing work, and you can just kind of like talk back and forth. That's generally what your coworkers are kind of there for, besides, obviously to help you whenever you need stuff done, and also to kind of like, give you like a little elbow saying, hey, make sure you do this, make sure you do that. But you can talk to them however you want to, as long as it's using appropriate language. I mean, like that's the big one right then and there. Now comes your superiors. Now, kind of going back into the earlier episodes when we talk about doing an interview, sometimes when you go into an actual interview, you could be interviewed by your future boss. And whenever you are working with your boss, you need to kind of take into an account how you're going to be acting around them. So if you're just kind of like, let's kind of go back to the interviewing process here. If we go back to the interviewing process and you're sitting face to face with your future boss, then obviously, you want to dress professional, you want to look professional, and you want to show them that you really care about getting this job and that you are the one who will be able to perform 100% at this job. That's the big thing. That's the big thing. Now let's fast forward to when you actually get into the workplace. Now, say you got the job, and for this example, let's use Target, for example. Let's say that you got a job at Target, and you're working on the floor, and your boss is just kind of like walking around inspecting the area. Now, when your boss is walking around the area, and let's say you may be talking to one of your coworkers, the best thing to do is obviously to be working, because you want to show them that you're working hard and you're trying to make sure everything is in order. Now, your bosses may not mind you talking to your coworkers. Now, let's kind of set up a scenario here. Let's say you're working over by the movies. You're stacking movies, you're putting them in their right spot, and you're just kind of talking to your coworker while you're working. That's okay. Your boss comes walking by, and they're like, oh, hey, guys, how's it going? And then you say, oh, yeah, I'm just getting some stuff done, just talking. Like, okay, keep up the good work. That's a good example. As long as you are working and, you're talking but not getting overly distracted, that's a good thing, too. And your boss won't really think anything of that. Now let's kind of change up that just a little bit. Let's say you're doing the exact same thing. You're putting movies away on the shelves. And let's say that your boss is coming down, but you're not really putting the movies away. You're just kind of holding them in your hands, talking about, the football game you watched last night. That's not a good way to show that you're really working in front of your boss, because if your boss sees that, they may think that you're lazy and you're not really taking pride in your work. So that's a big no-no. You don't want to do that. And that's just when it comes along for working. Obviously when you're working, you want to make sure that you are working to the best of your ability and your boss sees that. Now let's kind of move on to a different way of approaching and talking to a boss. When you have to go sit down with your boss, let's say it is to address an issue. Let's say you saw something while you're working, you felt very uncomfortable, and you need to talk to a boss. Now, you don't want to just flat out go to your boss's office, start knocking on the door saying, hey, I have to tell you about something, this is really crazy, and I need to tell you about it right now. No, that's not going to help anyone, and that's not going to work. What you really want to do is just, kind of lightly knock on the door, boss open the door, and then you say, I'm sorry, I don't mean to take up your time, but there's this issue on the floor that I really want to talk to you about. I was wondering if we can just have a few minutes. That's a good way to do it. That's a good way to handle it too. And even just when it comes to talking to your boss, even if you start to really kind of form a relationship with your boss, you may be able to talk about, random fun things that are work related, and your boss may find that okay. But you also need to know that while you're talking to that boss, you want to make sure that you're not taking up so much of their time, your time on the floor. So even if it's just coming into work, you're clocking in, and your boss says, "Oh, hey, how's your day?" It's okay to have a nice 5-minute conversation talking about how you're enjoying your day. You just don't want to stretch that out to like a half an hour conversation when you should be going into work, because that's not really going to be helping you in the long run. So always kind of keep aware that you want to try and hold off those fun conversations. And when you're actually talking to your boss, it's almost kind of like you're back in the phone interview. You want to make sure that you're talking professionally. You want to make sure you're not sounding crazy, that you think before you speak. Otherwise, they're not really going to pay attention to what you're saying. And it goes into a lot of different ways too. Especially when your boss is just kind of, let's go back to Target here. You're operating the checkout line, and your boss is just standing there, just observing everything. And they see you kind of stressed. They'll probably go up to you and say, "Hey, you doing all right? You need to take a little break." And then you just be honest with them, and then they'll understand. But, if you're kind of just standing there and you're not really doing anything, then they're just going to think you're lazy. So it all depends on how you act and how you assess the situation. And now I'm going to kind of jump to my personal examples with my bosses during the workplace. Now, as you guys know, I've worked at Disney 2 times now, going to be going on hopefully a third later on next year, hopefully. And I've had many conversations and many situations where I've had to talk to my bosses or just be around my bosses in general. And in the beginning, I will admit, I was a little bit afraid because, they are my bosses. I want to impress them, but I don't want to mess anything up. And especially when you're working at a place like Disney, you might get carried away because of all your surroundings. Because in the first place that I worked in Disney was Main Street USA in the Magic Kingdom. So I get to see a castle every time I go into work. You can't help it and kind of get excited about seeing that stuff. But then again, there are plenty of situations where I had to worry and deal with what my bosses were doing. For example, there are times when after I take out trash in an area, I am allowed to go and just start sweeping until my phone rings, my company phone, mind you, not my personal phone. My company phone rings, and it tells me you have another assignment. Until then, you just go ahead and sweep. So that's okay. But there was a situation where after I was done sweeping my area, there was a stage show going on in the castle. And since I kind of sweeped up my area for a little, I thought I would take just a little break, grab some water, and just watch the show. Well, I ended up watching the show for a little bit too long of a break, and one of my bosses ended up coming by me and like, "Hey Tim, you getting to work?" And I said, "Oh, sorry, I was just taking a little break and I was watching the show, and I didn't have I didn't have a task at the time." So I told the truth, and they understood. It's like, okay, just make sure you're keeping aware. I mean, we all like to watch the shows, but just kind of keeping aware. And sure enough, after they left, I got an assignment. I went right to work. I didn't get in trouble or anything, but that's the thing, and that's something that I forgot to mention at the beginning of the podcast. Always be honest with your bosses, because if you're gonna lie, you're not gonna get anywhere, and eventually it could lead to something bad, like even getting fired. So just be honest with them. I was taking a long break. I didn't pay attention. And I told my bosses the truth, and everything worked out pretty well. Now I'm going to talk to you guys about a situation that I talked about earlier, where if I noticed something in the workplace, and I needed to tell my bosses something. So this was a little bit crazy to me because I never expected something like this to happen, but this is how I dealt with it. Okay, it's nighttime at the Magic Kingdom. The fireworks just went off, and the park is now closing. So usually what custodian cast members like myself do, we do our final trash run where we take out all the garbage from all of our respected areas and we dump it. Now, as I was taking out my trash one day, I noticed this employee looking very frustrated. He seemed very frustrated, and he got really upset and started yelling out some really bad language. And needless to say, I kind of got a little bit scared because he was kind of shouting this as we had guests that were right next to our backstage area. And I felt a little uncomfortable. So what I did was I ended up going to another trash can to dump all my trash. And after I did that, a fellow employee of mine, coworker, I should say, noticed that I looked a little bit uneasy. Like, hey, Tim, you all right? And I said, there's this guy that was, kind of like yelling out language and acting a little bit scary. He's like, oh, you should probably talk to one of your supervisors. So that's what I did. I found a secluded, quiet place, and I called one of my supervisors, and I said, I'm sorry to take up some of your time here. I noticed something that's a little disturbing in the parks, and I wanted to talk to you about it. And they said, okay, just let me know where your location is, and we'll meet you right then and there. And that's what happened. My boss came over. I talked to them about the situation. I filled out a report. And then the next day I went into work. One of my other bosses came up to me and said, okay, let's go talk in the office and let's just review this one more time. And everything worked out really well. And that's really all there is to it. If you're open and honest, you're calm and collected, and you really show pride in your work, you're really going to impress those bosses. If you lie, you're lazy, then you're not really going to have a good work relationship, because I've noticed that if you can become friends with your boss, or if you show them that you really care, going into work is going to be really, really fun. You don't feel as stressed, you don't feel as worried about what's going on, because you know that they have your back and you have their back. And that's really going to help you in the long run. Because after I started making friends with my bosses, going into work, I was so excited. It was so excited. And granted at Disney I had many bosses, but no matter which one of them worked, I was always happy to be able to go and see them, because they understood, we got a lot of work done, and they made it pretty fun. And that's what you guys can do. Really show appreciation and dedication to your work, and you will be able to go into work knowing who your bosses are, how to communicate with them, and how to just go into work feeling calm and ready to take on the day, no matter how stressful it may bring. Okay, and I think that's going to wrap up this next episode of Preparing for the Future. We are on a roll, ladies and gentlemen. This is our 5th episode right now. We've got about 3 more episodes to go until the ending of this series, which I'm very looking forward to. It's going to be quite a great journey. But I have some very special things to announce for these next couple episodes. We're going to be diving into some more big topics, some of them being involving teamwork, and another one involving situations at the workplace that are bad and how you can handle it. So I know I kind of gave an example about that today, but I'm going to talk about more drastic situations, like situations where you said to yourself, I don't really know what to do. What should I do? Well, I'm going to guide you through that. And for those for the next 2 episodes, I am going to have guest speakers share their own work experience on those subjects of teamwork and situations at work that you weren't sure how to tackle. And then to conclude the podcast series, I'm going to have a final episode kind of going over everything that I talked about in this series and give you guys some final tips on what you can expect and handle at the workplace. But thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next episode. Have a good one, ladies and gentlemen.